Welcome to this week's episode of My Big Break Almost. Have you ever watched a movie, especially with those great action scenes, and wanted to know who actually does all that dangerous stuff?
No. I just assume the actors did.
Well, they don't. It's stuntmen and stuntwomen. And today we are going to have a real life stuntman, Chris Brewster, on our show.
I'm excited because I'm the one that suggested it.
It was her idea.
Yes.
I stole her idea, ran with it, and found a stuntman who has been in more than 150 shows and movies.
I'm really proud of you. You did a good job.
Yay, go me! We're going to have him coming up right after this. It's going to be awesome.
It looks so sunny.
It's sunny out today.
So jealous.
Pretty
So
much
jealous.
Perfect.
How nice.
It's so cold here.
Yeah, we're in Oklahoma, so it's cold today.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I can see that.
So do you live in Atlanta, or do you live in LA, or do you go back and forth?
Atlanta now. I lived in Los Angeles for about a decade, and then while doing Daredevil, my wife and I were basically spending half the year in Los Angeles, half the year in New York, and that went on for the first couple of seasons. In between Defenders and season 3, I got quite a bit of work out in Atlanta, so we came out to Atlanta just kind of as a temporary thing. And we were like, oh, well, we're going to be working out here for a little bit, so we came out here and just fell in love with the area. And that's right when we had our baby, who is now 3. So we were kind of in that intermediate stage of trying to find where we actually want for her to grow up. And we didn't really want to raise her in Los Angeles and didn't really want to raise her in New York. And when we came out to Atlanta, we're like, this is the place. This is where we want to raise our daughter. So this is home now.
Does your wife travel with you often?
Even before Caden, we kind of decided that we would only take jobs that we would do together. The first season of Daredevil was the only time that we technically lived in 2 different places. She was still staying at our house in Los Angeles, and I was in New York. And we there's a rule that I was given a long time ago from stuntmen who have like good family lives, and they were like, when you find your significant other, when you find the person you want to be with, give yourself a 2-week rule. Don't ever go 2 weeks without seeing each other. So just stuntmen travel a lot, and there's quite a few stuntmen who have amazing, incredible families, and quite a few stuntmen whose family life kind of falls apart because of the business. And all of the ones who seem to have the most successful family lives are the ones who are like, no, we have a 2-week rule or a 3-week rule or whatever their specific rule was. So my wife and I decided we would do the 2-week rule, and we've stayed true to that for almost 8 years now.
I think that's really neat that stuntmen, as far as a whole, you're kind of getting wisdom from, the stuntmen who have been in the past, I guess, had horrible relationships.
Yeah, well, that's one of my favorite things about the stunt world is the big brothering and the mentorship that takes place in the stunt world. I'm sure it happens with every different business and every different career you could have, but there's a real companionship that comes along in the stunt world. And I think due to the nature of anything that's life-threatening or anything that you're really putting a lot on the line on a daily basis, you have to bond quickly with your team. And I've luckily had some really incredible big brothers and mentors from day one who have kind of guided me along the way.
We are talking with Chris Brewster, a real-life stuntman. And if you thought risking your life on movies was something, get ready to talk to us for a little bit. So I hope you're ready for that danger.
Absolutely.
Now,
he's an amateur stuntman, by the way, but it's more clumsy than actual stunting.
Yeah, none of it's on purpose.
No.
feel like that's the best training. If you're just a clumsy person, the best training for stunts you can get.
I think it really is, because the theatrics on how he just trips, it's pretty funny. He goes all or nothing, you know. It's
I want to get it in one take.
yeah.
Perfect. If you do it right the first time, you don't have to do it again, right?
Oh yeah, entertaining.
That's
Keeps
right.
us entertained for sure.
Now, with the training you talked about, going way back before you became a stuntman, martial arts, you had an entire career just in that. Can you tell us about your experience and your 13 titles and the traveling the globe and everything that went along with it?
Absolutely. So when I was 4 years old, I watched the Ninja Turtles and was fully convinced that that was what I was meant to do in life. I thought that I was going to turn green and actually become a Ninja Turtle. Yeah, I knew from day one I wanted to be Raphael. I told my parents I wanted to start doing martial arts classes, and they enrolled me at a YMCA, and they had like a little kids program called Ninja Kids, which basically was a martial arts class put together for children with the attention span of a gnat. You would do a couple of punches, and then you'd go touch a wall, and then you'd run back to your mat, and you'd do a kick, and then you'd do 5 push-ups, and then you'd run to the other side of the room. And it was just a very energetic way of convincing children that they were doing martial arts. And I was hooked instantly. So I started martial arts at 4, got my black belt at 12, and that's about the time that I started kind of touring the world, doing martial arts competitions and demonstrations. I was in this really incredible federation. They took me to Moscow, they took me to St. Petersburg, to Vienna, literally everywhere. And over the next decade or so, I competed in every world championship I could find. I ended up winning 13 world titles in extreme martial arts. Basically, all martial arts can be divided into 2 categories. There's MMA, the mixed martial arts, which everyone's familiar with. It's what you see in the UFC. That's all the stuff that really works on the street. You know, I mean, it's Brazilian jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai, like the martial arts that you would use if your life was ever in jeopardy. The other side is XMA, extreme martial arts, which is exactly the opposite. It has 0 application whatsoever, but it looks really cool. So I have mastered the pretty martial arts, the arts that look really, really good, but you would never, ever use on the street. I can kick really high and I can flip through the air, which would most likely not save me if I ever needed it.
I've seen reels, just tons of YouTube reels on you doing so many flips and kicks continuously too. It's like a gymnastics type of dance. It's crazy on how many times you can just keep on going up in the air. And I'm talking about like, I want to say the height, like 6 feet tall, crazy. That's unbelievable.
It's a very, very fun system, the extreme martial arts. And I couldn't be more grateful that I found it, because one, it kept me out of trouble growing up. Well, I was a very rambunctious child, and I feel like if I didn't have the right direction, it could have turned to negativity. But the martial arts really gave me a good focus and a good drive. And, I didn't have time to get in trouble, because every day after school, I was going to martial arts classes. On weekends, I was traveling the world to compete or do demonstrations. So it was pretty incredible. And it obviously opened the doors to what I do now for a living. Once I went from competing, I competed, until I got a handful of world titles and kind of achieved everything that I wanted to achieve. My last hurrah, the last big goal I set for myself competition-wise was the Warrior Cup, which is kind of like the Stanley Cup of martial arts. Every year they have the American Karate Association Grand Nationals, and you compete, and the winners of every division end up competing against each other. So they break you apart by there's traditional forms, which are forms that have been passed on for hundreds and hundreds of years. There's musical forms, which is almost like a gymnastics routine. You know, you go out there and you get judged on the difficulty and the technique of what you're performing. There's weapons forms, both with and without music, with and without flips, all of that. But basically, all of the winners compete against each other, and the person who wins all of that wins the Warrior Cup. So my last full year of competing was 2004. Might have been 2005, but that's when I won the Warrior Cup. And pretty much that was the end of my competing. And then I joined a performance team called Sideswipe. And one of my really close friends, Matt Mullins, started this team. And it was basically a performance troupe that we would go around doing halftime shows and corporate events. And basically we took the extreme martial arts, the flippy twisty karate stuff that we do, and we started synchronizing it with each other. So it became almost like a martial arts dance. And we did that for a long time. We did like America's Got Talent and a bunch of like competition shows. And that's kind of what brought us all out to California. And ironically, you know, just because we were doing martial arts and it already had a very stunty nature, we started crossing paths with people who I didn't realize at the time happened to be legends in the stunt world. And, you know, we just met them because we got hired for a commercial. And when we started doing commercial, they're like, we want to see all that flippy twisty stuff, but we want you guys to be fighting each other. So we're going to hire a stunt coordinator to kind of design the action and keep you safe. So we started meeting all of these stunt coordinators who now they are second unit directors, first unit directors. Like, I mean, they're running all of Hollywood. They're doing the biggest action shows out there. And I met them just randomly. And, you know, and again, the stunt world is a very tight knit community. And a lot of them kind of took me under their wing and showed me the way. And, yeah, 15 years later, here I am.
You look too young to have such a big career, though.
Yeah.
Doesn't he?
Yes, he does.
You look like you're still about to graduate.
I'm backlit. It's the lighting.
The lighting. I need some of that lighting. That'd be great. Now, with Sideswipe, you said you did some halftime shows. I saw you performed for Britney Spears or with Britney Spears and did some corporate events. What was it like getting to perform in front of such large live audiences?
Oh, it was incredible. There's nothing like performing in front of a live audience. I mean, I get such a rush from working on TV shows and movies. But at the end of the day, if you mess up, you can do it again. Whereas when you're performing live, there's one take for everything. And we've done everything from 30-second shows where we're just, you know, one small piece of a really, really large event to we did a show called Theatrics, which was a 90-minute Sideswipe performance where we were performing for 90 minutes straight. It's a show that we choreographed top to bottom and put together, and it was a 90-minute routine. So you've got 90 minutes where you kind of can't mess up, or if you do, you have to, you know, cover it up and keep going because there's no take two.
I would need about 50 intermissions to do a 90-minute show like that.
It doesn't seem that long, but I'm sure it is. I'm sure it just when you're going through it, it's pretty long.
Yeah, it's well, the nature of the acrobatic martial arts. Normally, when we're competing, a routine is roughly a minute to 2 minutes long. It's, you know, it's all very, very high energy, very explosive movements and very anaerobic in its nature. So after a few minutes, you're gasping for air. So luckily for the 90-minute or the longer performances, we would rotate in a way where you would go out and perform, and, you know, when you threw your biggest stuff, you'd have a little break to get your wind before having to do something else.
Now, on My Big Break Almost, we usually talk about people's big breaks almost. That's the name. Yours ended up turning into a huge career, but first on America's Got Talent, you all were there for season 1, and then one of your members got an injury, and you all were the first group to come back for another season and made it to the top 8. What was that experience like?
Oh, that was awesome. We competed the first year of America's Got Talent, and I mean, it was unlike anything we'd ever done before. The entire team, it was myself, Matt Mullins, Craig Henningsen, and Jackson Spidell. We all grew up on the same karate circuit, so we were all very used to competing. But we competed as individuals, and we competed at martial arts tournaments against other martial artists. This was the first time that we were taking the art that we had loved and the art that we grew up and putting it in the ring against everything in the world. I mean, like, America's Got Talent is the biggest smorgasbord of talent ever. And it was really, really cool to just to be in the same room as amazing singers and amazing circus acts. The first time we walked in the room, I can't even explain how just in awe I was, because everywhere you look, there was somebody who was incredible at whatever they did. And half of the things are things that I've never seen before. You know, I mean, I've seen people juggle, but there were people that were juggling 15 things at once. There were people who were doing 25 hula hoops at the same time, people who could hold a one-handed handstand while having a conversation with you. It was just, it felt like it was a different world, and I loved every second of it. When we had to bow out of season 1, we thought that was kind of the end. You know, we had been a performance team for a couple of years, and we thought that was our big break. We were like, okay, well, you know, it's the biggest competition in America, possibly the world. And, you know, we went from 4 people strong to only 3, and all of our routines that we'd ever performed were with the 4 of us. So it really threw us for a loop. And at that point we were like, you know, we were too far into it, and we just didn't really want to do it without Craig. And so since Craig couldn't continue, we were like, you know what, it's not the right time. We're not meant to go on, and we withdrew. And then they called us back next year to compete again. And Craig was fully healed and ready to go. And we went for it again. And even though we didn't win the show, just being on the show was amazing within itself, and definitely got our names out there, and definitely helped us in our pursuit of entertainment as a whole. I mean, at the time, we didn't even know that we were trying to get into stunts and acting and everything. We just wanted to do martial arts and wanted to do martial arts in front of people. And it's a very entertaining and awesome story, because in the beginning, everybody wanted to act. The other 3 people on the team were very, very convinced that they were going to act. And I grew up acting. My mom is a director for a theater program, so I did a lot of acting as a child. And we kind of thought that's the only way that you can ever be in front of a camera doing cool stuff. So we all thought the acting was the path we were going to take. But now, you know, 15 years after all of that, we are all doing stunts, and we're all incredibly successful in this other path that we didn't even know existed at the time.
Were you kind of the leader that started the stunts, and then everyone else that was your family, or your, you know, dance family?
Yep.
Is that what?
Yep.
Okay. I didn't know the correct term. Did they just kind of follow along with you?
Well, the funny thing is, nobody followed each other's path. We all had very different paths that kind of all ended up in the same realm. I was the first one from the Sideswipe team to know that I wanted to be a stuntman. The other 3 were still very actively pursuing acting, and they were all very successful with acting. I mean, Craig Henningsen had a 3-movie deal. Matt Mullins has been the lead character in a few TV shows. He had his own movies. They've all done really, really well. For me, I knew as an adult that acting was more like schoolwork and stunts was more like recess. And I'm like, I kind of want to go the stunt route. So I was the first one who actively made that decision.
So your resume looks like a who's who. My highlighter actually started running out when I was highlighting all the big movies and TV shows you've done. I'm like, okay, I give up now, because just about it seemed all the Avengers, Ant-Man, Thor, Iron Man 3, Star Trek. We can continue all day long.
Avatar. I want to know about Avatar.
So tell us about the experience on Avatar then.
Well, it's a perfect one to start with because that was actually the first official stunt job I ever had. So in the stunt world, there's no such thing as like a stunt agent. Whereas in acting, you have agents and managers who can kind of help get your name out there, and then you audition for different roles. With the stunt world, it's really all word of mouth. And so the way you kind of build your circle in the stunt world is you hustle. You find different stunt coordinators, and you just awkwardly walk up and introduce yourself and hope that they'll take your headshot and hope that you're the 1 in 100 or 1 in 1,000 that they decide to give a chance to. The first stunt hustle that I ever had in my life was with J.J. Perry. If your highlighter ran low on my resume, you would need like 7 highlighters for his. He has literally worked on every action movie that has ever been made. The guy's incredible. So he was the first person that I ever approached as a wannabe stunt person. And I told him that I really wanted to get into the stunt world. And J.J. Perry, he was on the Olympic Taekwondo team. He is known for having one of the strongest kicks, like, in history. Like, the guy can kick a parking meter and knock the parking meter off of the little metal thing. Like, he's deadly. Yeah, I made the smartest and dumbest move of my career at the same time. When I hustled JJ, he asked what I could do, so I did the flippy twisty stuff that, I'm known for. And he was like, that's really, really great. I love it. Do you want to be somebody who gets in front of the camera and does a bunch of flips, or do you want to be a stuntman? Because, there are people who only want to do the flashy stuff and don't want to hit the ground, and then there's people who want to do whatever it takes. And so I told him, I'm like, I want to be a stuntman. I will take a hit and I'll prove it. And he goes, well, how's that? So I told him, if we can film it, I will take his back kick. I thought I was being a martyr for my career, because if J.J. Perry kicked me with a back kick, I would be 2 Chris Brewsters, not 1. And he told me
I
that
wouldn't have kids right now.
Oh my god. Yeah, well, if he actually kicked me, I might not. But luckily he ran me through the choreography and said, okay, roll cameras, let's do this. And we ran the fight scene, and right before he got to the back kick, he stopped. And he was like, I like this guy. And that night he called his friend, who became the first stunt coordinator that I worked for, Garrett Warren. And Garrett happens to be working on this new project that at the time didn't have a name, but 4 years later, when they were done filming it, it was named Avatar. He called his friend, and Garrett decided to give me a shot, and he brought me in, and my first real stunt job was Avatar.
That was such a big movie when it first came out. And yeah, it took forever. But yeah. I understand why. I mean, it's a gorgeous film.
Yeah.
When you're doing stunts like Avatar, James Cameron's known as being a perfectionist, thus it took so long. Was he on the set directing you, or did you have a stunt coordinator directing you and didn't work with the typical director?
Oh, no. Both. But James Cameron was right there. The majority of stunt work, the stunt coordinator is on set and the director's on set, so you're working with both. So on Avatar, James Cameron was there every single day, and he's absolutely a perfectionist, and so is Garrett Warren, which it works perfectly. They were both very, very hyper-focused on every single detail, and I can't tell you how blessed I feel that was my first real stunt job, because I didn't know any better. I literally thought that's just how it was on everything. So I thought that every director and every stunt coordinator was gonna, watch if my toes are pointed or if they're flat, or, if I do a move this way or that way. And I mean, even like the tiniest little imperfection, we'd do it again. And it was the most incredible learning experience ever. Continuity is a huge thing in the stunt world, and being able to replicate a movement or be able to take a movement and replicate it, but make little detail changes throughout it, is so imperative to being a good stunt performer. And I mean, I got a crash course. I learned very quickly, if you can't do a move exactly the same way 10 times in a row, you don't offer that move up. You know, it's definitely something that has stuck with me ever since, and I really, really am grateful for that.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of multitasking.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's just a lot more. There's a lot of levels there that, you know, coming into the stunt world, you don't know. You know, I mean, I didn't realize how important it was if I did a double corkscrew. You know, a double corkscrew, you basically kick one foot up in the air and you do a backflip with 2 twists and land back on the same foot.
Easy.
And
your basic move.
Yeah.
Easy.
Well, to me, I was like, hey, if I can just do that move, then I'm golden. They'll make it look good on camera because it's a really complicated move. But I did the move, you know, maybe 5 or 10 times, and every time I landed looking a different way. And I didn't think that was super important until I realized, oh, wait, they're trying to make sure that as I land, the camera's pushing in on my face. So if I land facing a different direction, they aren't in the right spot, so we have to do it again. And I realized, wow, you have to come in as a master of your craft.
Was there a part in a show or a movie that you had a director that continuously was giving you bad feedback?
I've actually been quite lucky in that there's a few directors who are known for that kind of personality, and I've been lucky enough to not have a lot of experiences like that. It's been very good for me, but I do know of quite a few stories of stuntmen having directors that are not happy with them.
And you're just going to keep them all to yourself like everyone else. I'm like, one day we're going to actually have someone on our show that will give us a little bit of dirt. But it's all right.
When you're retired, maybe you can.
You're not bound by a contract.
That's right. For actors that get the limelight, they get the big check, they get the lines, and then you come in and do all the dirty work and the grunt work. What is that like for maybe an actor's perspective that you've dealt with and your perspective?
Well, from my perspective, they're taking the big gamble, because even though we do the riskier moves, it's their face. So ultimately, if I'm stunt doubling an actor and I do a great job, I'm going to make them look really, really good. But if I, you know, do a fight scene and it looks kind of dumpy and lame, no one's going to think, oh, hey, you know, it's because the stunt guy was awful. They're going to look at the fight and be like, wow, that guy's terrible. So, you know, I mean, I feel like they deserve the praise, because they would also get the verbal abuse if if it didn't work out and if it didn't look on camera.
That makes sense. Have you ever worked with Jackie Chan?
Yes. And it was the only time in my entire career that I've ever been starstruck. Very early on in my career, not long after Avatar, one of my stunt idols, Bob Brown, called me up for a job. And he asked for, you know, my height and weight and everything. And he's like, great, you're a great double for one of my actors. I'm going to bring you in here. I'm going to fly you out tomorrow because I need you to fight Jackie next week. And I'm like, yeah, cool. I didn't know who Jackie was. He just said Jackie like it was like a stunt name that I should know. And I didn't want to be the new guy who's like, I don't know that guy. Mm-hmm. So I flew out to New Mexico and walked onto set the next day and started talking to the stunt coordinator. And I was already so stoked to be working with Bob Brown because he's a stunt legend that I really wasn't even thinking, hey, who's this Jackie guy that I'm going to fight, until Jackie Chan walked in the room and he introduced himself and I shook his hand and opened my mouth and nothing came out. I was just like, awesome. And then I had to follow him into the next room so I could actually say my name. But it was amazing. Jackie Chan is every single thing that you would think, but times 10. Like, he is such a master of not just performing, but everything in entertainment. we were running through the choreography of a fight scene, and he watched the fight once. Like I had been, spending the last hour and a half or so training with his team, because basically they would choreograph a fight, and then you'd run the fight with one of his teammates. And after you'd run it 10, 15 times, one of the other guys would step in, and his timing would be different. His movement would be a little bit different, but you'd run the same fight with another guy, and then another guy, and then another guy. And so I'd been doing this fight for about 90 minutes. Jackie walks in, he watches the fight once, and he goes, okay. And he steps in, and he starts running the entire fight. He memorized it instantly, starts running the fight. And while we're running the fight, a bunch of camera guys were setting up one of the cameras, and they were having some troubles with the matte box in the front of the camera. And he just kind of glanced over my shoulder at one point, and then went back to finishing the fight. We finished the fight, and as we catch our breath, he goes, hold on. And he walks over, takes the matte box off, turns it around 90 degrees, puts it back on, and it's fixed. And then he goes back to doing the fight with me. Like,
wow.
He literally saw out of the corner of his eye something going wrong with the camera, and he was able to fix it because he knows cameras better than camera guys. He knows lighting better than lighting guys. He's like, the dude he's so intelligent and so well-rounded in his knowledge. It's like, you look at Jackie Chan and you're like, okay, his martial arts knowledge is off the chain, but you only expect film experience to go so far. There's a lot of people who have been doing movies for 20, 30 years and don't know how the cameras work, don't know how the lights work or anything like that. He knows everything. Like, he could literally do every single position on the film set. And I think that should be the ultimate goal.
So Jackie Chan not only does his own stunts, but he does his own camera work as well.
You know what? If anyone could, it would be him.
Yeah, I believe it. He seems like such a sweet guy too.
Every single day that we worked on that project, every single day he would take his stunt team and the majority of the cast and crew out to dinner. Every single day, as soon as we'd wrap, he'd say, hey, I'm going to blah, blah, blah. Anyone who would like to come with? He would take all these people out, pretty much whatever restaurant we would go to, would find out that Jackie Chan and all these people wanted to come in, so they'd close the restaurant, and we'd go in, we'd eat, and there was never a bill. Jackie always covered it for his entire team and everybody around. He's that guy. So
wonderful.
Wow.
What film was that?
Spy Next Door. First time
I know that one. Yes, we have.
First time I worked with Jackie, and the first time I doubled Lucas Till, who has been doing incredible ever since as well.
Now, what are some of the other Avenger characters that maybe you have some stories on, because you've done so many Avenger films?
Well, I worked very closely with Chris Evans on Captain America Winter Soldier. He is awesome. I feel like he's one of those characters who was cast because he is Captain America. Like, not the fact that he was frozen for, years and years and years, but
oh man, you spoiled it for me. Darn.
I mean, he may have been. You never know.
Okay, good.
But he's just genuinely the character that he portrays on camera. He's a good human being. He's really, really cool, works his butt off. Basically, the first month or so that I was working on that show, my entire job was to train with him. And I remember the first day that we were training together, we went to a gym called Jam, Joining All Movement, which is out in Reseda, California. And they have a trampoline there. And he asked if he could warm up by bouncing on the trampoline a little bit. And he started flipping, like front flips and back flips and brannies. And I'm like, well, I thought that it was day one and I was going to be teaching you how to do forward rolls and stuff. And he's like, I grew up with a trampoline in my backyard. So he's just incredibly acrobatic and just athletic. Ironically, every one of the actors on Avengers is a superhero. Well, I mean, like, they could all literally be superheroes. They're all very, very athletic, very fit.
Beautiful.
Yeah, they're all fairly attractive human beings.
You got to tell me though, you're on Thor. Hemsworth, he's really a weakling, right?
Yeah.
Those muscles
Oh,
are
yeah.
fake.
Definitely.
Tell me.
It's all CG.
Good.
Actually, I feel like between him, his stunt double, and their personal trainer, they are three of the most physically fit human beings on the planet.
Wow.
I wouldn't doubt it.
In fact, his stunt double, Bobby Holland Hampton, and I forget his personal trainer's name, but the two of them both competed for like the Australian men's health competition, and they took like first and second place. Like they are the cover people
Hans
for
and Franz.
men's health. Yeah, I mean it's unreal.
Man, I was just trying to think of who in my mind physically fit people were. And of course, Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I don't know why I was thinking Hulk Hogan.
He was.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe there's pro wrestling in your career if you ever want to do something fake.
Yeah. Your stunt work also kind of combined with some parkour.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I was doing parkour back when it was just called pretending to be Jackie Chan. I mean, the flipping and twisting has always been such a big part of who I am and how I move. When I first moved to California, I was training with all of the Tempest boys before they'd actually created a team called Tempest. But, we all went to the different gymnastics open gyms because they have like spring floors and giant foam pits. So, ironically, we all like ended up at the same gyms randomly. We would all like practice movements together. And I came in very acrobatic because of my martial arts. But then I started working with these people that were like, hey, we're going to do the flip you just did, but we're going to take 3 steps off of a wall and then do that flip. And I'm like, well, that sounds like fun. I'll try that. So I, started flipping with them. And we all kind of, in a very healthy rivalry kind of way, we all would one up each other. But that just like created all these new movements for all of us that enhanced my parkour, but also enhanced my martial arts tricking. And, now in the stunt world, nobody ever says, hey, I want to see a specific parkour move or a specific martial arts trick. They're just like, hey, you're on the second floor. You need to get down to the first floor. Do something cool. Ready to go. So, now we all have much larger arsenals that we can pull from.
Yeah, it seems like a bunch of guys with too much to drink saying, hey, watch this. But yet you guys do that for a living sober.
True. Very, very true.
What are some of the more dangerous stunts that you've performed?
I did a movie called Fright Night, which was a remake of an old vampire film, and I was doubling Anton Yelchin. And not to give away the ending, but basically the way he decides to take on a vampire is to light himself on fire and chain himself to the vampire. So he basically puts on a fireproof racing suit, lights himself on fire, tackles the vampire, and they fight. And it's a big, big fight. So over the course of 3 days, we did 36 full-body fire burns and 22 partial burns, all while being literally chained to another human being. So it was pretty intense. But I was working with an amazing stunt performer, Mark Wagner. The stunt coordinator was Bob Brown, who I talked about before. And again, he's a legend. Mark Chadwick, who is in charge of our fire, is like one of the most sought after fire professionals in the entire stunt world. We had an incredible team, and as crazy as the stunt was, it was easy when we did it. Like we were just so fully prepared that it just flew right by. And it wasn't until we were done that we were like, oh wow, we did a lot of burns. Like that's really cool. And then we won the Taurus World Stunt Award for that year for that fight. So it was pretty cool. Definitely one of the biggest.
I would have thought that maybe you would have said running on the bus on a cliff as it's tilting, just trying to hurdle. That to me would be like, wow, don't panic.
Yeah, for heights, one of the coolest and scariest gags that I've ever done, and never made the movie, On the movie Percy Jackson 2, we got to do a really, really cool ratchet off of a roller coaster. I want to say it was something like we were 120 feet up, and we got ratcheted 80 feet down and like 80 feet over because it had to look like we were landing on some swinging chairs and stuff. So it was this big, massive ratchet off of a 120-foot high roller coaster. So we got to do that one, and the stunt was really, really awesome, but nobody will ever see it because they ended up changing the ending of that movie.
That's the worst.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking with all of these stunts, did she ever come to see your stunts?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, now she does stunts as well.
She does?
What?
She does.
Wow.
When we met, she was mostly doing fitness modeling and a little bit of acting and stuff. And as her acting career picked up more and more, she started walking the line of stunt actress / stunt woman because, I mean, since we met, we've been training together. So she's been doing martial arts with me. We go to gymnastics places together, to trampoline places together. She took the driving courses just because they're fun. So she was training for stunts without intentionally training for stunts. And then she, would randomly get a call like, hey, we want you to play this character, but this character is going to get beat up and thrown over a table. And she's like, cool, I'm in. Yeah, so she has ironically been doing more and more stunts over the last couple of years. So at this point, I think she does more stunts than acting, but she kind of does everything.
Wow.
That is awesome.
I'm a little worried about your child not having parents if a stunt goes wrong.
No.
A stunt baby.
Knock on wood.
She is already quite a stunt baby herself. She's doing gymnastics. She already has her forward rolls and her cartwheels. She's pretty amazing.
Have you ever been injured on the job? I know that's a silly question. Okay, what levels of injury have you had on the job?
Well, I've broken a few bones. The last season of Daredevil, the final fight, I broke my leg. 100% my fault. I designed a stunt. I designed every element of it, and I knew it was a very, very risky one, but it was the finale, and I love that show and just wanted to go so big, so I pushed it a little bit too far and ended up breaking my leg. Luckily, I heal very, very fast. So after breaking my leg, I was flipping again. I want to say it took about 2 months to rehab it. I'd say, enough to flip.
That just sounds painful.
Yes.
But much, much longer ago, in between season 1 and season 2 of Daredevil, I tore my Achilles, and they told me that was going to be a really long one. But I was doing backflips on that 2 months after I was sewn back up.
Wow.
And that was all before season 2, and so I was throwing double corkscrews and double twists and all kinds of big moves. So I kind of realized a week or two into shooting that I'm like, I'm healed. I'm good to go.
If I was a stuntman, I would want to do work like on the Golden Girls. Somewhere along that kind of a pace would be fine for me.
Yeah, where there's no stunts at all.
Yeah, a substitute for B. Arthur. We look alike, so I could pull that one off.
I'm trying to see. I have a question here because he's taken a couple of. I think he's cheating on my sheet.
Just like in school.
Sheet. But I was curious on what was the most uncomfortable or restrictive costume that you had to wear on any of your stunts. Or if there was any.
Well, I do have to give the wardrobe department a lot of credit because those suits could be so much worse than they actually are. 95% of the time that I was blindfolded, I could see just fine through the blindfold. There were a few situations where we found out the hard way that if it's nighttime and the blindfold gets wet, it becomes an actual blindfold. So there were times that I was actually flipping and fighting blindfolded. The Captain America suit was the heaviest suit that I've worn, but that makes sense because he's very, very big and muscular, and even with that one, I tried it on the first time, like, oh, this is going to be really, really hard to move in, but the wardrobe team just worked it out. I mean, it weighed probably about 20 pounds with like the muscle suit and with all the different pieces and everything, but they made it comfortable somehow. And it's so weird how with a good team, things they just kind of work out, and even though it was a cumbersome suit, they worked it out in a way that it didn't hinder the movement at all.
So I see you have Loki coming out, and any other shows that you're excited about that you want to share that you've done stunts in?
Well, I'm really, really excited about a couple of projects. I just don't know if I could say anything about them yet, because the the entertainment world is very, very secretive, and they make you sign NDAs for everything. So I think I'm only allowed to talk about the projects that are actually out already. There are a few that I'm really, really excited about working on, both ones that I have already worked on and ones that I'm supposed to be jumping onto as soon as this quarantine lockdown ends.
Were they movies or TV shows?
Both.
Okay.
Both. I mean, so I've been working on Loki. That one's just gonna be amazing. I mean,
I'm excited about that.
Loki.
I can't wait.
My favorite characters.
Oh, heck yeah. As far as an evil character, yes, he's a lovable, likable, evil guy.
Yes.
I mean, any character who can literally be destroying the world while making you like him
Yeah.
is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Not like Thanos.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's some characters that you're like, that's a bad guy.
Yeah.
But Loki, you're like, well, I mean, technically he's a bad guy, but like I want to be his best friend because
Yeah, he's got
so
charisma. There's just something about him.
Yeah, that one. I mean, I've been excited since I even heard that one was going to be made, and now being a part of the team is amazing and incredible, and I'm very, very excited about that one. Just before the break, I got to start doubling one of my idols, Scott Adkins. He is, in my opinion, like the action superstar of our generation. In the 90s, you had like Van Damme and Dolph and like,
Yes.
all of the actual action guys, I mean, Schwarzenegger and Stallone and all the guys who did the Expendables, like there were a lot of big name action stars. This generation there's a lot of stars, but not necessarily a whole lot of action stars, and especially not a whole lot of action stars that aren't known for being superheroes. Scott Adkins is a legend. Like the dude is incredible. He can flip and twist and do everything. And I mean, I've been watching his movies for decades now, and I got to double him on a film called Castle Falls, which we started filming, but then it was shut down. So hopefully we get to continue that after the break. And then I don't think I can say anything else about it, but there's another actor that is a good friend of mine who is just one of the coolest human beings ever, and I am supposed to double him on a project where he's playing just an absolute badass assassin, which just is just incredibly fun, and that one's supposed to happen after the break as well. So hopefully whenever all of the craziness ends and life gets back to normal, hopefully I get to jump onto those projects, and I will have more to tell you guys after that.
I have one last question for you. She may have more. To me, you would be perfect for a game I like to play, and it's really just a question, so not really so much of a game, but it's called Name Drop. Without a telephone number, who are a couple of maybe people we wouldn't expect that you actually have in your phone that if you wanted to call, you could pick them up right now?
Jackie Chan.
That would be awesome. I have emailed with Jackie, but I don't have his.
That's
don't have
just
cell
good.
phone.
That's cool.
I actually have just about every actor that I have doubled, I have become very, very good friends with. So I mean, like on my speed dial, out of my favorites on my phone, there's about 5 of the actors that I have doubled who have literally become family. I mean, I spent 5 years doubling Charlie Cox, and I mean, at this point, he is a brother to me. Like, if he called me up tomorrow and was like, hey, I need a little bit of help, I would go drive out to New York tomorrow, because he's a really, really wonderful human being, and just a good friend of mine.
That is awesome.
That is really sweet. That's a great name drop.
That was perfect answer. I
Yes.
appreciate that. Not only are they on your phone, but they're like a brother.
Yeah, they're friends.
Yep.
That's really cool. When people tell me, I'm going to say, Chris Brewster. I talk to him all the time. You're like that.
Love it. Love it. They won't know who you're talking about, but
Man, this has been so much fun. Literally, we could talk to you probably the entire quarantine about all the different movies and shows that you've done. But I think we're probably going to hit a pause and give you a break and get round 2 whenever you get to start these other projects you can't share yet.
I love it. That sounds like a plan.
Do you ever want to work with your wife real quick? Real quick.
Oh yeah, I love working with my wife. We've had a good couple of opportunities to work together. We're still looking forward to the first time we get hired to beat each other up, because normally we're on the same team when we get hired.
Well, I hope that happens. I'll cross my fingers.
Yes.
Yeah.
I hope
Beat each other up. I would love to beat my husband up on TV.
Yeah, usually it's off screen, so that would be nice on screen. You've been a blast, Chris. Thank you so much for taking your time and sharing some fun behind the scenes stories.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Great talking to you guys.
Great
You
talking
too.
to you.
Thanks, buddy. Have a good day.
You too.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. His broken bones, almost like a badge of honor.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure these guys get together at dinner, all the stuntmen, and talk about all their injuries.
Well, I'm surprised that he didn't have more injuries from what he could have had being a stuntman for 15 plus years.
Mhm. I guess it shows how good he is and how
Mhm.
safe they actually make it.
Which, of course, if you've ever seen his highlight reels on YouTube, they are incredible. How many times he can flip, how many times he can just do in the air somersaults. It's crazy.
It is incredible because if you talk about not only those dangerous stunts, just the simple things, as we call them simple, of taking a punch, taking a kick, or throwing a punch and not hitting, falling, all of those
Or
things.
getting burned up.
Oh my gosh, I saw that on the highlight reel when he
Mhm.
was talking about that. Imagine being chained to another guy and they're just going to light you on fire. You'd be like a human
Don't
s'more.
panic.
Yeah, don't panic at all. It'll be fine. We've done this 0 times. You'll be fine. He was so cool, though, to talk about all those behind-the-scenes stories. And we only got to touch maybe 5% of the movies that he was actually in.
What I also love is his story going from martial arts to getting into being a stuntman. It kind of, I think, helps people hear that and see how maybe they can possibly grow into doing something like that.
Yeah, he took us from age 4 to where he is now, and he did
Mhm.
it succinctly, which was great. I really like that his My Big Break almost, whenever they missed season 1's final of America's Got Talent, and they thought that was it. And now look at what his career has taken off since his My Big Break almost.
I'm just wanting to know his mind flow in that whole process of being on America's Got Talent. That's what I want to know, is what were they thinking as far as if they did win, what would come next, or how they would live, have a career at that.
Well, we're going to have him on again and ask him. That's what we're going to do. So we will have him on hopefully again. And I hope that you guys had a blast like we did learning about the stunt world, which is fascinating.
Mhm.
Download our podcast, our YouTube, and join us next week for an all-new episode of My Big Break Almost.